Hey guys, Cajun Rebel here. Welcome to a special series of episodes for my series, The Strange and Unexplained Phenomena of the South Mountains of North Carolina. Officially, this is going to be episode number 20, part 1. However, I'm going to change things up a little bit on you. And you're going to watch this, you're going to want to watch this to the very end, especially those of you who was with me on the live last night. We talked about a lot of this last night, but at the end of this episode tonight, I'm going to come through and deliver what I promised you I would deliver with something we didn't talk about last night. So hang in there with me. Normally my cup of tea is I simply interview witnesses, I collect their stories, and then I share those with you. But what I'm doing tonight and for the next couple of episodes is I have done research, mainly internet, but also I've researched some books, especially the BFRO website. You can go on there and use BFRO website. That's Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. You can pick a state, and each state is broken down by counties, and you can go county by county and read reports to your heart is fulfilled. Also, as usual, I use the Bigfoot Casebook updated edition. You can get that off the internet on a number of places, to include Amazon. So these are all reports that I had nothing whatsoever to do with. These were people I didn't know that made reports to sources that I have no connection with. And I'm dedicating tonight's episode with all the possible sarcasm I can muster to a certain smart mouth who said that this phenomenon did not exist until I came into the area. So, without further ado, let's go back to 1972, 1973, in that time frame. It's a BFRO report, and it's near a place here in the South Mountains of Cleveland County called Butler Knob. A man who was a lifelong hunter and outdoorsman was hunting a ridge in the Butler Knob area, and he happened to look up, and on the ridge across from him, he saw at about a distance of 400 yards something that at first he thought was a bear. But it became very obvious to him that it was no bear, because the creature he was observing had been walking a great long distance on two legs. Now, if you know anything about bears, they will get up very briefly and walk on their hind legs. But it's not comfortable to the bear, and they are not very efficient moving in that manner. They're going to drop down and walk on all fours 99.9% of the time. This creature this man was watching, he described it at being over 7 feet tall and dark in color. Now, he said that as he watched the creature, it stopped, and it started doing something very mysterious. He said it started messing with the tree branch. He couldn't tell what it was doing, and I suppose that's going to remain a mystery forever, of knowing what that creature was doing with that tree limb. But then the creature just turned and walked over the ridge and disappeared over on the other side. Now, to some people that might sound like a simple encounter without a lot of frills, but I assure you that every encounter like that deeply impacts the witness. And in this case, this lifelong, intrepid outdoorsman, for the rest of his life, swore off ever going to that area again to hunt. And that's a common thing that I have found with witnesses that I have interviewed, and witnesses that I have seen interviewed on documentaries and in books. But however brief their encounter was, it caused them to stop going to a certain area. Normally, your outdoors people, your hunters are very intrepid. They're not a lot scares them. But when they swear off of going and hunting a perfectly good area, that tells me a lot. Now, I want to say that in the winter of 1978 into 1979, which is a special time in the history of this phenomenon here in the South Mountains area, there was an entire cluster, many encounters that was reported. And I'm not going to just spend a minute and a half or 2 minutes talking about that. There was too many things happened. It was very complicated. There was some skullduggery involved. So we're going to give that whole thing its own episode, and we're going to skip over that for now. But it was during that time period that our creatures here gained the nickname Nobbies. And we'll talk about that when the time comes. Let's jump ahead to March of 1991. Rutherford County, North Carolina, near a place called Bat Cave. Just 25 minutes up the road, 30 minutes from me or so. But certainly within the range of the South Mountains. There was 2 fishermen, and this comes from BFRO. There was 2 fishermen fishing the Broad River in a sparsely populated area. Fisherman number 1 saw a creature suddenly, looked up, saw a creature watching him from the other side of the river. And he said that this went on for 5 or 10 seconds, which in that particular circumstance can seem like it, in the moment, can seem like it lasts for hours. Imagine locking eyes with some creature who you just looked up and suddenly there was this thing looking at you. And he said it then just simply walked behind a laurel thicket and disappeared. But he could hear it walking in the thicket, which tells me it was a large animal. He described it as 6 to 8 feet tall. And here's the interesting thing. Lean and not bulky. Now that goes contrary to almost every description that an eyewitness has ever given. Normally they're very big specimens, robust physical shape, but this one was lean and not bulky, and that caught my attention. And then I saw his description of its coloration, that it was dark brown, but had gray hair also, which tells me it was an aging creature. Perhaps it was it had disease or was nearing the end of its life. But fisherman number 2, who was about 50 feet away, had a different vantage point. And he said that he watched the creature, sick or not, effortlessly walk up the side of the mountain on the opposite side of that river. And that it hid in the thickets. I would certainly like to talk to these 2 witnesses. That would be great. I believe every word of it, but I would certainly enjoy a conversation with them. So if either one of you are watching this episode, reach out to me. Now, to those of you who watched the live last night, we'll end tonight's episode with something we didn't talk about last night. This comes all the way up to October of 2021. We're skipping in time, we're skipping ahead, but we'll go back and we'll finish our chronological discussion of sightings. October 2021. 2 hunters riding 4-wheelers in this area along part of the Broad River. The man on the lead 4-wheeler could hear something over the sound of his engine. And it compelled him to stop and shut his engine off and to listen. And then he was able to very clearly hear this noise and understand what it was, no longer impeded by the sound of the engine of that vehicle. He said it was this long howling noise that started out deep frequencied and low, and then it rose in pitch and also rose in volume, and it cycled through that twice. And he said it shook him up just terribly. And he heard his friend coming up behind him on the other 4-wheeler, catching up with him. And he turned around and was frantically waving his hands like that. And then he put his hands out, telling his friend to stop. He wanted his friend to stop immediately. And his friend slowed down and was coming closer and closer to him. And suddenly, his friend got this shocked, surprised look on his face. His eyes got big. He immediately started pointing behind his friend, trying to get his friend to turn around and look behind him. And there behind him stood this 7 to 8 foot creature. They estimated to be over 400 to 500 pounds. And it was just looking at him. And then suddenly turned, walked through the river without its head ever going completely underneath, and then disappeared in the woods on the other side. We'll see you on part 2 of